Good afternoon. I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the Galveston County Utility District number 12 for Monday, June 15th, 2020 at 6 p.m. The meeting is called to order. We have a quorum present, which is more than 3 board members. So we will go ahead and start the meeting. The first order of meeting is always the Pledge of Allegiance and a prayer. Please stand.
We moved it.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Let's have a prayer. Father, we thank you for letting us come to this country and worship you. Help us, Father, in this meeting tonight to stay calm and to be respectful of one another and to mindful, attentive, and listen and understanding. We know, Father, that your work is unfinished. Help us just to be your servants. In His Son's name we ask it. Amen. Thank you. A couple of changes, not changes, but information, if you could, please. When you speak to the microphone, hold it close to your face so that the people who are live streaming can hear the questions and so everyone can hear exactly what's going on. Number 2, just a public statement. We have received the 10 questions that were on the Facebook. I received them this afternoon. And if you'll hold, those will all be discussed in the public comment section at the very end. But you'll find that most of them will probably be answered during the presentations today. So for the first item of business, the public comments on agenda items only. So does anyone have a public comment for agenda items only? Okay. Appreciate that. Next will be the minutes for consent. Oh, okay.
Public comment again, number 13. You gonna be able to bring that up later on?
Yes.
Okay, I'll reserve for later.
The number 3 is just for the items that are on the agenda. All right, I appreciate that. We will consider the minutes for the previous meeting. The teleconference minutes are not available as of yet. There's a whole different set of approval ratings for the teleconference. So we have the meetings from the regular call meeting on May 18th. Is there any additions or corrections to the minutes of May 18th?
And I'll take responsibility for that. They should have been distributed before this meeting. We don't normally prepare minutes in my office for this district. We do for a lot of other districts, and so I apologize. They haven't been reviewed by the board prior to today. So it's up to the board whether they want to approve them subject to your review. And we could approve that today, subject to your review. If there's no material comments, if there are only immaterial corrections or scrivener errors corrected, then we could get those published as soon as they're finalized.
Okay.
But I'll take responsibility for that. We have circulated around our office, and Sharon pointed out to me today she had not received them.
Okay.
And so that's my fault.
Okay.
But they could be considered for approval today and then get them circulated. That'll allow them to get up faster than waiting another month.
Okay. I apologize. I have a new iPhone 11 and I'm still trying to figure out how to run it. My apologies. All right, so what we'll do is we will have 2 votes on both minutes. So first off, for the May 18th meetings, May 18th minutes, is there any approvals or changes for the minutes?
No changes.
Do you have a motion to accept the minutes? Motion by Newman, second by Roy. All in favor? Aye. Okay, the second item is the motion to approve the minutes by the telecom that we had. And then Mr. Bacon will get those published. And then once we review them, we can put them on the website. Is there a motion to accept that?
Motion to
Motion
accept.
by Newman, second by Roy, all in favor? Aye. So both minutes will be approved, and these will be published on the website as soon as possible. The next item is a regret, if I could. Regret to inform you that Mr. Roger Dominique has resigned from the board. He was a great asset, and with this, we have to accept his resignation. So, receive a motion to accept his resignation by Eric, second by Newman. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Mr. Roger is officially not on the board. Considering the current climate and considering the amount of time the board is putting in, we could use some help. So I would recommend putting out a call for resumes to fill the positions, and so we can review them at the next executive meeting. What's the board's discussion on that?
I think it's a good idea.
Good idea.
Okay? Is that, yeah, let's have a motion to that
That's
effect.
fine. Doesn't require a motion, does not require a motion, requires an instruction to district
Okay.
staff
Okay,
to put the call out.
all right. So will the district staff, Sharon, put the call out on their website, and I'll put the call out on the streaming tonight, and to the members here that we will accept resumes for the position open for the board, and we will review them at the next executive session, at the next meeting. Next item is the bookkeeper's report from Lydia. Lydia,
We have two,
speak,
tran-
speak closer to the microphone, if they can hear.
we have two transfers today, one to the general fund. We have two transfers today, one for $35,000 to the general fund and a $5,000 transfer to the debt service fund. So those are the two transfers. For the financials, our revenues through May 31st, which is 8 months into our fiscal year, is $1,098,000 against a budget of $926 for a positive variance of $172,000. Our water operations to date are $200,670 against a budget of $203 for a positive variance of $3,000. Our sewer operations are $212 against a budget of $215 for a positive variance of $3,000. Our general operating expenses are $227 against a budget of $223 for a negative variance of about $3,500. And year-to-date on administrative is $271 against a budget of $236 for a negative variance of $35,000. And our capital outlay, we have year-to-date $28,000 against a budget of $45 for a positive variance of $17,000. On a year-to-date basis for the general fund, we have a positive net $120,000. Any questions?
Is there any questions from the board on the financial report that Lydia presented? Lydia, just for the sake of the people in the audience and streaming, just to reiterate, the residents of MUD 12 voted to authorize the board to go out for $4 million for bonds, is that correct?
Yes.
All right. of that 4,000,004 bonds that we were authorized, the MUD chose to take 2,000,005 as which would not increase our debt load. Is that correct?
2,550,000, yes.
Right, okay. And of that 2,000,005 that we went out for bonds, taking away the cost of the bonds and the cost of the money we spent so far with the plant, we still have $567,998 in the bank. Is that correct? Correct. And so left on the authorization is $1,000,000,850 roughly. Okay, all right. So just want everyone to know that we're, the current state of the bond and the authorization, all right? Do we have a motion to accept Lydia's report? Eric, second by Newman, all in favor? Aye. Thank you, Lydia. Appreciate that. Next will be the operator's report. Please be mindful here. This is our new operator, Tops, and they are doing the job for 2 weeks roughly. They've presented to us a draft of what future reports will look like, and it's very efficient and very timely and very informative. So this time, Nathan will make a report based on everything together he's had so far. Nathan?
Sure. Right. How about now? Okay. I did flip through here the operations reports from the previous operator and understand some of the water and wastewater numbers reported here, and you guys can flip through that, and I'm sure you're familiar with that format as well. What I brought to you tonight is kind of a sample demo, if you will, of what our operations reports will look like moving forward. There's a few pieces of information we'll be getting from Sharon every month related to total water consumption and connection count and all that, and then all the other pieces we'll be filling in along with that. But if you see, if there's other charts or tables that you'd like to see added to that, please let me know between the meetings or something like that, and we'll be sure to include that. That'll be a living document with your fingerprints on it as well. So otherwise, tonight what I brought was what I call manager's report, and these will always be attached at the end of that operations report as well, just to highlight a few of the major maintenance and repair items from the month that you might be invoiced for, and or give a status update on certain projects that we're working on or involved with. So right now this is just one page here, but the consumer confidence report and the lead copper testing, those are both in progress. I think the consumer confidence report was finalized in with Sharon's office. We had some feedback from her on that, and then the lead copper testing, as we get addresses, we'll be posting those out. You guys are due for those this year in your district. Typically you're on a 3-year schedule with those. You'll see kind of normal preventive maintenance items here on the sanitary sewer collection. I mentioned the special samples we pulled from the lift stations, looking at the different levels of the flow coming in. And one thing we noted was the salinity at one of the lift stations, and we've got a field test kit that we're going to be starting here this week or next week on kind of moving upstream from those and seeing if we can narrow down where some of that salinity is coming from. Otherwise, at the wastewater treatment facility, we've already seen significant visual improvement on the effluent quality. We had our first lab results, or first lab samples under our management would have been pulled last Thursday, and so we're still waiting on those results to get confirmation. But we like what we're seeing as far as the process of the plant and how it's reacting to the changes that we're making, and you can already see, like I said, visually a difference on the effluent. We did have a number of housekeeping items that we got well underway as well. There were some major cleanup needed in those offices. That's as far as a workspace area. we threw a lot of old owner's manuals away, a lot of documents dated 1996 to 2004 kind of range. And then there were some very informal copies of paperwork that, it was copied on the back of something else, and it was very obvious that there was duplicates elsewhere at this office as well. So a lot of that cleanup, if you get over to the plant now, you'll see a big difference on already downstairs in that area underneath, and then the office area upstairs as well, as far as organization and ease of maneuverability inside that office. We've also been working with the contractor K2 and understand that they are moving forward some PM preventive maintenance items that they already had on their schedule with you guys, and to service some of the equipment in the plant as well, so that is moving forward. What I also brought for you to consider is a punch list after our walkthroughs and inspections, and just some items we like to note of kind of a before condition, if you will. And I won't go line by line through these, but you can kind of see most of them very small things that are easy to remedy. Things that would be pointed out in a TCQ inspection, missing windsocks and signs and things like that. So we'll begin to work through some of these at these facilities. And then kind of at the end of that document, you see some bigger picture items on surveying some of the dead-end flushing valves, surveying the water valves, waterline valves. We need to get a good handle on when that was done last, but I think that's needed. And all this will not be done in the next few weeks, you understand. So these are things we'll be looking at, over the next few months to make sure, we put in a plan to get some things caught up, RPZ inspections, CSIs, and of course we'll be looking, along with the salinity testing and working with Bill on identifying areas of inflow and infiltration, like we talked about from the canal waters that possibly are coming in on that Pompano lift station side. So we'll be looking for that. And then some of these other programs we can talk about further down the road. Fire hydrant surveys, your million gallon meter changeouts, etc. So just wanted you guys to have this and be thinking about this as well as we start to move forward. If you guys have any questions for us, for me, for Mike, we're here. But that's really all I had to report to you tonight, unless you had any other questions.
Just a couple of questions. You said that there's going to be a dead-end flushing valve survey. Could you explain what that is?
Sure. So you've got most all of your streets, the water lines loop back around, the water mains loop to both sides. You've got several that have a dead end. The water main runs and then stops. There's usually a blowout there, or there should be. The state requires those be flushed on a monthly basis. And so we need to get a real good sense of how many of those we've got good access to that are able to be flushed regularly, and that's just an overabundance of caution in purging out those dead end sections of the water mains. That many gallons you're required to flush on a monthly basis.
Okay.
So again, that's just the survey to identify, if there's repairs needed or locations that we need to add or find those dead end valves.
Okay. And the water valve survey?
Yes, sir. Similarly, those are what we call inline valves, or even the fire hydrant valves. Just for normal good operation, never get a main break on a Tuesday morning. You get a main break on a Friday night or something, and to be able to quickly locate those, isolate them, make sure know that they're able to be found, and that they're going to isolate a section of the water mains. So we like to do a survey there. We've got a valve exerciser equipment that can open and close those valves multiple times in a pretty efficient, non-stress on your shoulder kind of way. And So those get exercised, they get located, they get marked, and, you know, updated to the map if needed. So that's what's involved in that survey, and then again, that's just the initial look and exercising them, and then we bring a list of our findings if there were others that needed to be raised or lowered or located or repaired.
What's the RPZ inspection history?
Yes, so your backflow preventers at each of your facilities, that's a requirement that the state's going to look for on the water lines that come into your facilities as well. And I don't, did we locate we need to know when those were tested last and find their certificates on those. Again, that's just, we like to be ready for any kind of inspection, you know, well in advance, and you stay on top of the records and everything for that.
What about on the houses?
Any questions?
Backup records?
Could you restate the question on the microphone?
Sure. The question was about at houses, at residence houses, vacuum breakers. That's not something we would typically police necessarily, so that's something that would come up when you first do a customer service inspection at a house. You'd look for that and make sure those are installed. Most districts don't have us go back and police that after the fact, but you know, there are many instances, especially here, where those can be required and asked to be replaced.
In the work you've done so far, would you get a survey or a conclusion on the increase of the clarity and of water from the wastewater plant?
Would I give a conclusion?
Over the last 2 weeks, what would you say would give a conclusion or summary on what you've done to increase the clarity of the wastewater plant?
Okay, sure. Basically, there was a large sludge buildup in each of their clarifiers, a thicker sludge blanket than you would normally see. A lot of that has been pushed into the chlorine contact chamber, which is kind of your final treatment basin. Over time, I don't know how long that's been, you know, continuing to push that way. We've increased the returns, so the process is some of that sludge is returned back to the aeration basins, where then the bugs are reactivated with additional food coming in and the dissolved oxygen that's in those tanks, and they continue to work, and that reseeds the process, if you will. So we've increased some of the return flow back to your aeration basins, so the clarifier blankets are still dropping. I think today, in the past couple of days, they've been down about 3.5, 4 feet. We still want those to continue to come down closer to 2 feet. Once we feel good about, you know, the balance of the plant, that the bugs are active and working well in the basins, doing their job, then we can come through and clean out what's in the chlorine contact chamber as well, which there's still a lot of old sludge in that basin that we want to remove.
Okay. We have 2 temporary fine screens that are functioning. How much debris are you catching with the fine screens?
As much as you would hope. Those are cleaned regularly, and they do catch a lot. You know, that's the first step of the treatment. You're trying to pull out a bunch of the inorganic kind of debris. Mike, do you have any specific comments to the fine screens? I think, yeah, I have not heard any trouble with that at this point.
Okay, so the 2 temporary fine screens are put in the week after, or the day after, week after Easter. And just wondered if you can say we've seen some kind of notice of change with the material inside the aeration basins and clarifiers based on the screens.
Sure, and of course we didn't see it before Easter, but my understanding is those are working much better than what was there previously.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, all right. One more question, the testing that East Texas has done, you've done, do you see any difference in the testing results?
So we had results from the 4th of June. Those were on par with what we'd seen previously. Like I said, they pulled again last Thursday, and those that would have been a week after our changes would have been made, and that's where we expect to see some
Okay.
difference in the numbers, and those should be out any day.
All right. There was a report of some soapy discharge from the fluid pipe. Is that a result of the system we're using?
I'd have to get a better description on that. Was
Okay.
it foamy looking, or was it clear and soapy description?
It was
Like
just stated
salt
soapiness
water
when it goes up.
bubbling.
But the-
Okay.
The salt water does.
Yeah, I don't know what specifically. I have not heard of
Okay.
that.
All right, there was a question I seen, I just wondered if there was a
Hang on
particular.
a second.
Just a sec, Richard.
Cleared last week, and then today, with the resolution, that will be final. It's not, doesn't have 10, but it goes to final.
If that is worth repeating, can you repeat it on the microphone?
Sure. Mike, you want to come?
Well done.
I think I heard parts of that, but it was cleared up a lot more the other day. Just today, I think he said he noticed a little bit of cloudiness back in it. But like I said, this isn't an overnight switch. It's still going to be a process of continuing to improve over the next few weeks with the changes we've made.
Okay, all right. Any questions from the board?
I think you addressed all of them.
Okay. All right. Do you have a motion board to accept the report from Nathan and his team tops? Motion by Eric, second by Newman, all in favor? Aye. Okay.
Excuse me,
Thank you,
Richard.
Nathan.
What I also brought with me was a copy of our proposed contract, and I don't know if this is the time of the meeting,
Oh, I
if
haven't
it's
seen it
later
yet.
in the agenda.
Have you completed
I
the contract?
have, and I've reviewed it. I have no major comments. It's an issue for the board. You may approve that today. Currently, the situation for Tops is that they are hired on an interim basis pending the approval of their contract ongoing. So,
So I'll explain a little bit
Yeah.
more what we did here as we've understood it. Our plan is to hire Ben full-time as a dedicated personnel for this district. We also found, I think, some of the rates and numbers we discussed at the previous presentation. We found that there's actually 5 lift stations instead of 3, and that some of the other requirements with the meter reading and such, I've set it up where it's a flat fee on a monthly basis for all the basic services that we talked about, but that'll be a dedicated personnel with Ben working under our supervision, and so that's kind of the fee structure, and you'll see here in these in exhibits in the back of these contracts how that is set up as well.
and I'll make a comment on this. This is a very fast-track timetable for anything like this. So with that in mind, if the board would like to review this further, and Newman, I know I was asked to work with Director Sharp on this contract. We've really only had it for a week. I mean, Tops was engaged less than 3 weeks ago, I believe, or around that amount of time. And so long as Tops is okay with it, there's no rush to approve a formal contract. It can be amended. It has termination options in it, like any contract with any municipal utility district does. But if we want to make sure it's right, this would be more informational about what are the rates of services that are going to be performed during this interim period. And so if you want to consider it, I know TOPS is eager to get under contract because who wouldn't be? But at the same time, the board can choose how to proceed here. Now, it's certainly informational about what their charges are in the interim, and we just haven't had a chance to have I don't think the board has had a chance to review it.
Yeah, that's fine.
And so I have, as far as the legal part of it, as far as what is industry standard and things like that, I'm comfortable with it. It's consistent with industry standards on all fronts as far as I'm concerned. Now, that's not the business standpoint, which might be the board's
I got a chance to just look at it. and
prerogative.
just-
So, yeah, I don't want anybody to feel like they're getting steamrolled
Sure.
on process here, because this is admittedly, I think Nathan would agree, a faster than usual process. That said, the interim engagement of TOPS is through the trust of TOPS, that they will be paid by the district.
Would it be legally authorized for the board to vote to approve the contract based on review by yourself, Newman?
I would actually rather this not be approved subject to review. I would like a contract to be executed in its final form when that is the appropriate time. Now, I have no issues with what has been presented by Nathan, but if the board would like further time to review it, then I would ask for just a motion to continue the interim authorization subject to the terms as presented,
I'd like
under the
to-
terms as presented, and when we sign a contract, that there be no questions, ifs, ands, or buts, or that we float around multiples or anything like that. That is a very important agreement, and it needs to be final. I think anybody who does this kind of work would agree with that.
The question from the board is, are we okay with continuing the interim agreement with TOPS until the final agreement is to be reviewed by Newman and Mr. Bacon, and then presented to the board for final ratification and signing?
Yes,
Yes.
So move.
so moved.
Roy so moves that the interim agreement continues.
I
Mr.
second.
Sharp seconds. All in
All
favor?
right.
Aye. So the interim agreement will continue until which time that Newman and Mr. Bacon review it and present it to the board for ratification. Okay?
I think, and as a key point of clarity there, I think Ben will continue as an employee of the district
Yes.
until that point as well, so.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. Until there is an official agreement, we're not going to change any employment status of any district employee.
Thank you, Nathan. Just as a sidebar comment, today I walked over to the plant, and all three of us are very familiar with the office and the break area that they would meet in, and that normally there was a path to go through to talk, and now it's totally clean. So it looks like a regular office and a regular place at work, and they show up. And when employees are happy, the job gets done quicker. So I thank you for cleaning things up and discarding it just as an understanding. Formal records, formal reports, formal testing agreements are all kept in the files in the main office here at the MUD under lock and key with Sharon. So we have formal copies of everything is here in this office. All right, Mr. Bill Manning, our illustrious engineer.
Okay, let's back up. General items, the TxDOT I-45 project is still on schedule for August 2020. We're working on the letter of no conflict, being issued to TxDOT for the 8-inch water line. Anticipate that'll go out, either end of this week or first of next week. AEI records, the district has, working with Sharon on getting those records. That's been a hectic few weeks. I just haven't gotten that done yet, but we've discussed it. Next item, wastewater treatment plant evaluation. Working with Mr. Bacon to have a neutral third party. Again, Michael, I need to get you information. I know you're waiting on me on that. So I'll get
And I've
that.
had some discussions with possible third-party reviewers as well.
Okay. Michael and I will get back together on that. Item B, discuss plant performance and TCQ NOV. As Nathan discussed, the plant is looking better. DO is better, sludge blanket levels better, MLSS levels are better. On the TCQ NOV, as discussed in the town meeting, we finally got the official letter on around the 1st of June, or no, I forget the date. Anyway, we actually have that letter now. We're preparing the response to that, and we'll be submitting that to the TCQ as required. Basically, the thing TOPS is doing is addressing those items, and we'll address the specifics they mentioned in the letter as well. There's another pending NOV or letter. I'm not sure if it's going to be NOV or what will be sent, but we had the exit interview. That's the one that discussed the solids in the canal, and we'll address that as well. On the salinity testing and smoke testing of the sanitary sewer, I understand there's some confusion about some of the things I said, so I just want to take a moment to try and clarify. Salinity is basically a measure of salt water, how much salt water is in the raw sewage coming in. Ideally, you shouldn't have any. The wastewater coming to the plant should be what's coming out of your houses, what's coming out of the businesses, from washing dishes, flushing toilets, doing laundry, things of that nature. The fact that we have high salinity, it means we're getting flow from the canal into the sanitary sewer system. And what salt water does to the biological process is it interferes with it. Just like you and I, if we swallow a little salt water, it doesn't taste good, but it doesn't hurt us. But if we drink a lot of salt water, it can cause damage to our bodies. So same kind of analogy for the plant. Cells don't respond well to high salt. Their membranes can rupture and things like that. So the salt water, when I talk about salinity, I'm basically talking about salt water getting into the plant. So we've identified we're getting a fair amount coming in through Pompano, which serves about half the district. So as Nathan discussed, they're getting a portable meter so we can track that upstream, get a better idea of where that's coming from. And once we've kind of identified an area, that's when we start doing either some smoke testing or televising of those lines to see what's going on. We have direct inflows at numerous cracks, where the problem is, and get it addressed. Discuss cleaning and televising inspection of the effluent line. The effluent line, unfortunately, only has the one manhole near the end on it. Has multiple cleanouts. We found the drawings on those. We're going through them, and we want to identify where those cleanouts are. Try to get our eyes on them at ground level. See if there's obvious problems like cleanout tops are busted off or the cleanouts buried, things of that nature. So once we have a clear idea of our access and address any obvious problems with those cleanouts, then we'll have a proposal to the board on televising and cleaning out that line. Discuss cleaning of the canal outfall. I know that was some of the questions that came up. The canal is Corps of Engineers, and the TCQ, mentioned in their exit interview, they wanted to address any solids in the canal. I know the Corps is now looking at that and to see what's there and see if a permit's required or what needs to be done. So we're waiting to hear back from the Corps on that issue. Any questions on those items so far? Wastewater treatment plant, fine screen flow splitting project. We're about 95% complete. We're working on the electrical. TCQ does not really review the electrical, so we're at the point that we're going to be submitting to the TCQ for approval of the overall design concept, performance requirements, etc. Like I said, the electrical details they don't review, not part of the design criteria. So that's why we want to go ahead and get that in, so we can get that review underway while we wrap up the electrical design. So anticipate I'll be submitting that letter, summary submittal letter and drawings to the state first part of next week. Cost and bidding on the project. We're going to be preparing a cost estimate for the board to consider, and at that time we'll discuss how we want to proceed with the bidding, availability of funds, etc. Treatment plant temporary fine screen. We still have 2 24-inch temporary screens installed. They're performing well. I think Mike mentioned they're still cleaning the baskets twice a day. If you've been up there, there's pretty sizable baskets, a fair amount we're pulling out of the incoming. Wastewater treatment plant clarifier rehab. We're reviewing the bid documents prepared by AEI and the design. We're getting ready to send them our comments to AEI to get them to address the issues that we've found and finalize the changeover to our bid documents and front-end documents to simplify the bidding process. And once we get that clarified and addressed, we'll be submitting that project to TCQ for approval as well. Water system, we had a complaint to the TCQ. Unfortunately, because it's anonymous or confidential complaint, we only had this, were able to find out the street it was on, so we did flush that line on that street. TC requested basically records information. We've submitted that on June 9th as requested. That's all I've got for my report, and house questions.
Any questions? On the salinity testing, there was a discussion at the last town hall meeting, I think it was, about the possibility of putting a flapper valve on the end of the effluent pipe. And I know that was going to create a head pressure you got to overcome to open it. Could you discuss that?
Yeah, and I think this is where some of the confusion may have been on the effluent is basically after, that what's in that effluent pipe is what's after the plant. If we get salt water back into that line, it really doesn't, it's not a concern as far as treatment operation plant process. The outfall weir is well above that, so it's not an issue of water flowing out. We do have some concern there may be a partial blockage, but as far as getting salinity up in there or flow back and forth in that pipe, it's really not a concern. And if you put anything in salt water, especially flapper type valve, concern is it's going to try and rust shut, so it would end up impeding flow. So I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think there would really provide any real value.
The cost of the screen and the bidding process, would you, I haven't seen the cost on that yet. Is that
The cost of the screen,
right?
yeah, that's, now that we've got to the point on the design that we're ready to submit, we gave just a ballpark initially. We'll be doing a more detailed cost analysis now that we've gone through the design, and we'll have that at the next meeting.
All right, just for, there was a concern that there was items flowing over the weir and then flowing out the effluent line, and we were told that that was not a possibility. Could you and Nathan have done quite a lot of work in the plant? Could you tell us if the effluent going over the weir is clean?
Yeah, that effluent is a lot better. When they talked about clumps, looking at the pictures that were in that report that we finally got from TCEQ, what that is, as Nathan talked about, we get some sludge buildup in the chlorine basin, and what can happen over time is it'll do what they call denitrify, which is the bacteria taking oxygen off nitrogen compounds, and so you're left with nitrogen gas. And that nitrogen gas forms a bubble, small bubbles, and you get enough of them in a clump of solids, it'll cause it to float. And I think that's why we were looking at the picture, that appears to be what that was. And it's a pretty diffuse clump. I know, it's not like a ball of dirt you'd put in your hand. If you tried to grab it, you'd be grabbing water. I know it looks solid, but it isn't solid. The solids are so small, it's not like that you can't grab them with your hand. Just to kind of give you a comparison. It's not like grabbing a clod of dirt.
Okay. All right. Just for the audience's clarification, the reason why the clarifier rehabilitation is on the agenda, is on his program, is because the board was not satisfied with the construction work that RMB was doing on the plant, and we voted to remove the clarifier from their project, and they agreed. So we're going to do that as a separate contract to get a much better contractor and have a much better design. So it was a board decision to remove that item from the original contract so that we could ensure that that was done correctly. Any other questions? All right.
I have a question. Did you intend to say that the clarifier plans need to be clarified? And if so, can you apologize for that terrible joke?
The clarification on the clarifier?
Yeah, exactly. That's the plans that Richard just mentioned about the project that's being reassessed for, but I've been sitting here for 5 minutes, I can't get it.
Well, I get in trouble every time I say investigate, so
Well,
maybe I need to
okay.
come up with a better word.
Fair enough.
So, yeah, basically we're reviewing.
I was gonna say it after the meeting, but I don't know how long we're gonna be here.
Okay. Yeah, no, we've done a detailed review. There's some conflicts in the drawings that just don't work. So we're addressing those concerns in the letter, and we'll be seeing that to get those drawings corrected. So, that better?
No, I mean, I was pointing out how ridiculous that statement was.
Sorry.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Bill. Motion to accept Bill's report by Eric, second by Newman. All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. It's refreshing from the board's standpoint to have an engineer's report that's logical, understandable, and we can discuss. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the Galveston County Health District's contract. I've been, from the last two meetings, we've contacted the Galveston Health County Health Department, and we have two contracts in front of us. Just so you'll know, the one that says 2487 on the dollars. The one that says 2487 on the front page. On the front page. Yeah. One that says 2487. Their contract year runs through the month, just had it in front of me, through September 30th. So the first one is for the contract through September the 30th for the 2487. And then the next one is for 3066. Now, I just do some estimations in there. And I'll ask Nathan and Bill this one question. We have a couple of restaurants in the Mud 12 area that there's never been what we found out is that the Galveston County Health Department has not been checking the restaurants for the grease traps. So the question to you is, because I put it here, is do we need that inspected by the Galveston County Health for your type work?
We are more than happy to do that. That does not have to be a certified health type of inspection. That's a visual, is it clean, has it been serviced recently, is there a buildup of grease and all that. That type of inspection program is necessary when you have a wastewater treatment plant because that does impact the material there. It's built up, it starts to float and it spills over into the sewer system. Does cause problems at the plant. But those types of grease trap inspections we do for all of our other districts.
Yeah.
Save some money, great, okay.
Well,
And,
yeah,
and I would add to that, for any other consultant that works with other districts, that is a normal service provided by district consultants.
Yes.
And it's front line of defense.
That's great, thank you. Just saved us $1,000.
Okay.
The contract then just is for the testing of the canals. And if you look on the contract, there's, I just estimated and had there's 5 canals to be tested at the end of their canal. And 3 times for this year, with a total in of 1668. And then for the next year, for a total of 6 times, because after we do the first 3 months, then you can have fewer testing, we'll understand what we're doing. And the next year for 2784 for the testing for the canals. Again, each one of these contracts is a 30-day get out, so it's not something we're locked into, but the Galveston County Health Department requires a contract to do any type of testing in the area. And the reason it's for the mud is because the canals are in 3 different areas. 3 different areas. So I guess I can just have a discussion with the board if that's something that you would wish to proceed with.
Maybe at this juncture. Maybe at this time, this might be something that we should look at.
Closer.
Closer? Can you hear me now? No?
Okay.
Louder. I want to hear louder. Well, I think that it might be something we should really look at and proceed with, because I think right now we got to get it to the point where it's a little bit better. So
Okay.
I'm all for it.
Okay. Anyone else?
I would also like to see if we can have them possibly take a sample or 2 from maybe Tiki Island and Harbor Walk for comparison samples to see what their levels are running at also. This first one.
If they already test those, we can do that.
Right,
It's just
okay.
public knowledge, right? Yeah. Okay. That'd be great. All right, so then, what we'll need in front of us, do we wish to,
Sorry, Richard. For the purpose of considering a contract for these testing services, it can always be added to. and it could always be, canceled at any time. But I would recommend that it be for the Baywater testing services that you're not about to be engaged in with operating and current services. And engage it for those testing services, additional testing services. Because I think that's what the conversation is getting stuff done that has never been on the table before.
Correct. This has never been, as I talked to Ronnie and Katie, they said they've never, they've done it as a courtesy, but they've never had a regular
Let's
series
get
of
it
testing.
regularly done.
Right.
Yes.
And we can engage it now, and if you want to engage Newman as well with me about finalizing any change to this proposal, this one would be more appropriate for approving now.
Okay. So then we would take off the grease
It's
traps.
just a testing contract.
We'll take off the grease traps because Nathan said their company does that. So the only thing we're talking about is for the remainder of this year, to have 5 canals tested 3 times will be 1668. And then next year, to have the same canals tested not every month, but every other month, which is our normal testing procedure for a total of 2784.
I'm all for it. I think that's a good idea.
So Newman Sharp moves, we accept the contracts. Second. Eric, all in favor? Aye. Okay, we will make the necessary changes to this contract to take off the grease traps, and we will finalize it for Newman and my signature as far as the contract with Galveston County Health Department. I would like to make a statement here. The Galveston County Health Department has said that the canals that they did test, although they were above standards, they said they were not any cause for alarms. And that was also published in the letter by Mr. Lou Wortham to the city of Boa Vista. All right, next item on the agenda is a canal project update. And if you will bear with me, I'd love to give you a update on the canal. There's been some very interesting happenings the last couple weeks. Before I start, I would like to say that this has been a very interesting event for me to do, because one of the things I've seen in this project is the hand of the Lord, because He has really He's opened some doors that wouldn't be opened. So, in May of 18, I'm just going to go through a 4 or 5 minute, 3 minute synopsis on what's happened for the people who are on streaming and for the people who are new to the area. May of 18, I joined the Mud Board. At that time, I looked at the dredging reports from 2002 and 2018 and saw the extensiveness of the problems within Boa Vista and also Omega Bay and original Boa Vista. At the same time, we had just finished the third vote for authorization of bonds. The first one was for $17 million. That was for wastewater plants and some other stuff, as well as dredging. That was defeated. That second one was for a little more than $4 million. That again was for wastewater plants and dredging, and that was defeated. The third one was approved. And that was just strictly for wastewater plants. Dredging was taken out, and that was approved. So knowing that dredging was an issue, I started reading, and I went back and started talking to the Highlands Bayou Watershed. This is their book. And if you want to go online, it's available online. It's the Highlands Bayou Watershed. It's a project that has been, they got funding from the TCEQ and also from the Galveston Bay Estuary Program to complete it. It was started in 2016, was the last draft, and their proposal was to